All right, guys, welcome to the Junto Podcast. I am here with my lovely sister-in-law, Kelly Barnett, Gold Star mom, and we're going to talk very, very special episode, probably the most personal episode I know that I've ever done. And, the purpose behind this podcast for me was just about to have conversations that people might be able to listen to, that they can relate to. Maybe they're going through something in life or whatever the case may be. We're always talking about stuff, but this, if you've never tuned into this podcast, I want to encourage you to do this very special episode. We're going to be talking about my nephew, Kelly's son, Sergeant Darren Taylor Hoover, who was one of the 13 that unfortunately was taken on August 26, 2021. But before all that, he was my nephew, and I know he's your son. So let's talk, Kelly, a little bit about Taylor. Let's talk about his personality, because I want people to know who my nephew really was. Tell us about Taylor.
He's a goofball. No, he is. I know people, say that or think that maybe I just, because of what happened on August 26th, but he's definitely a hero, but he was a hero way before that.
Wow, yeah.
He was always beyond his years, so mature, more mature than me, but definitely a goofball. He was a movie buff. He was, I think y'all saw a little bit of his craziness, but he, just like Jim Carrey, he could sound like anything and quote movies.
Yeah.
And he was hilarious. I love him. And he was a good kid. Anti-bully, anti-mean.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious to say that, because you talk to all of his guys that, that he trained, and they're always like, Staff Sergeant was
like, are you
sweet
serious?
And crazy like that?
They probably saw a whole other side to him,
Yes.
which is awesome. And, that's how it
Yeah.
works,
Yeah.
And I could imagine, we'll get to his military career
Right.
in a little bit, but I could imagine you have to put on that.
You do.
You're the leader.
You do. You do. But a sweet kid. He was a sweet kid, but he was very much about the business that he had to do. But always a sweet kid, always so fun-loving. And, he was a godsend for me when the girls were little.
Yeah. Taking
care of his sisters. Like I said, he was just so mature, but a goofball. Always wanted to be a Marine since he was a little boy. They never played with Army men. Sorry for all you Army people. They were always Marines.
Marines. Sorry, guys.
Always Marine. Even
Semper Fi.
since he was 2 or 3, they were Marines. And I don't know. His favorite movie was Starship Troopers.
Oh,
so maybe I don't know.
I still watch that movie every time it comes
all
on.
All the time, but that was his favorite. And I don't know, that and Jurassic Park, but it was always Marines.
Yeah,
always.
You guys were in Utah when Heather and I started dating, but Taylor was still very young when I came into the picture, and I definitely claim him as my nephew. And I know he claimed me as his uncle, which is amazing, but we didn't get to spend as much time. But the memories that I have of Taylor, I take it back to that Stone Cold Steve Austin, when we were, what we did when we were kids, I guess when we were young, we'd make movies. I guess you have TikTok now, but we didn't have that crap. Yeah. You had to set up a camcorder and it actually took effort. And then you couldn't just edit it on a phone like you can now and make it look good. But, we did those crazy videos where I was a rock and Taylor was Stone Cold, and then Brett was the ABC
Hilarious.
kid. Oh, throwing each other around the rooms, and Taylor had that. He was that strong, silent in that particular video. He's playing that strong, silent role, and I love that about him. But every time you guys would come down, it was just a big deal. Taylor would come down and. Over the years, we'd see him, and then as time goes on, you hear, man, he's in the Marines, and then we'd come down, and it's like, oh, wow, he's on a special assignment. And what I know about Taylor, he always wanted to be, right in the mix. Tell us about that, and tell us how did he, when did he know? Because I know it was, immediately after high school that he joined the Marines, but tell us what happened in Taylor's life when he really made that decision to go and serve his country?
Well, 9/11 affected him a lot. And I think that's when he made a decision. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember he always wore that silver bracelet?
Yeah.
It was a 9/11 memorial
Wow.
bracelet. He wore that from the time he joined the military and got that. When he, found that those were the thing in the military to wear those bracelets. It was
Yeah.
9/11. And he wore that. He was wearing it the day he was killed.
Wow.
I have it. But it affected him. And I know that that day kind of set it in motion. And then, he would talk to me when he was in high school about wanting to join, but he didn't know for sure.
Man.
Was it going to be Army? Was it going to be Marine? It was just Army Marine.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
And so,
It wasn't the others. Sorry, guys. No.
and then the recruiters came to the high school. He made friends with them. He would go out on runs with them and get to know them. And then he made his final decision. He's like, I'm doing it.
Wow.
And so he got into the MET program, and yeah.
That is crazy.
Yep.
Some of my earliest memories outside of, him coming down and us doing, we'd do the typical that we play paintball and we'd get all crazy. And looking back on that now, I could see how serious he was because, we set up, little fortresses and we'd get on teams and playing paintball, and man, he was into it.
Was it back behind your house?
Well, we did it one time back behind my house, and then when Billy Ray, your dad, when they were building, it was like all open back there, and we did it one time back there, and we separate in teams, and we get a plan together, and I mean, it was intense, They're playing to hurt you, man. It was a good time, but I can see how all that translated into what he ended up doing as a career.
Yeah.
So Taylor was in high school, and like you said, 9/11 happened, and it was pretty much like immediately after he graduated that he enlisted, right?
He did. We kind of had a talk with him, and me and his dad were separated at the time, so Taylor agreed to stay, just wait a year or so after he got out of high school to make sure it was right for him, and he never wavered. He wanted it. He wanted it. So he, in January of 2010, he joined the MEPS program, swore in, and then the MEPS program is basically you're in, you sign, but you work out every like 3 days a week with the Marines, and all your paperwork's done, but they give you a date to go in. And so he went in on September 13th.
Goodness.
Of 2010, and September of 2011 he was in Afghanistan. So yeah.
That is crazy.
Yep. Graduated boot camp December 10th of 2010.
Wow. That is just crazy to think about. It all happened so fast. As his family, we always knew when he was deployed, but, we really never had a grasp on what it is he's doing, because you would come into, you weren't living here at the time. But when you would come in, you'd give us the information. Of course, we'd process it. But unless you're inside of that, unless you're really in it, you don't really know what all that entails. But and it's crazy to think about, because I always remember, like, this would always come up when you would come in town, whether Taylor was with you or not, but you'd always say, what he signed up for, it's like really serious.
Yeah.
And, it's crazy to think about that because... looking back now, it's like, my gosh, like he really gave everything he had.
He did.
He didn't sign up for the bull crap. He didn't want to be.
We had to talk about that.
What did you tell him? What did you advise him when he was doing all that stuff?
I can't say some of the words, but I told him, if you're going to do this, you're going to give 100%.
Yeah.
He said, yes, ma'am. And I said, in boot camp, in SOI, that's the training after boot camp, that's School of Infantry. I said, when you're in there, I said, I don't care if they beat the crap out of you.
Wow.
Taylor. I said, you let them beat you down, because I'd rather them beat you down and teach you, and for you to, it could become second nature to save yourself, rather than somebody in Afghanistan taking you and.
Wow.
I said, don't be a.
Go ahead on, girl.
I know. I'm not going to say it, but I said when you are on the ground, I want you to picture me looking up, or I want you to picture me up, looking down at you, saying, "Get up."
That's it.
That's
some
exactly choice words,
right.
But get up and you do this.
Get
and he promised, and he told me that it helped him every step of the way throughout his career. It helped him. So
man, That's crazy.
Yeah.
So he signs, he enlists, and then a year later, he's already in Afghanistan. And he did overall, 3 tours in Afghanistan?
Well, he did. His first 2 were in Afghanistan on the ground. And then he did 2 MEWs, which are cruises, which basically they're on a ship. They go to different countries, stay for, a certain amount of times in each country according to what they're doing there.
Yeah.
And then this last one, he was sent to Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
But his platoon was sent on a special mission, so he was on a ship from May of last year until the end of July. And then he went to Saudi Arabia for, I think he was there a week and a half, 2 weeks. And then they were sent to Afghanistan.
Goodness.
But yeah, the 2 first were Afghanistan on the ground.
That's crazy. I remember when he would come in, because Christmas, obviously, when he was available, would come in for the holidays. But I remember one time he showed us like some pretty intense video of combat, and that's the first time it became real for me. I like, wow, my nephew is like in some. Yeah. And dude, it literally changes things. I don't know as civilians if we really grasp some of the things our servicemen and women are doing, or what they're forced with, and what war is really all about. And I always just remember thinking, wow, he's been able to still be himself. I know you can't be in war without it affecting you to some degree. Everybody is affected. It changes you. It's got to change you. But I just remember thinking, wow, he is level-headed for what he is doing. And I remember watching those videos, of course, with Jared, your brothers, and my brother-in-laws, and we're all watching that, and we go out, we're like, damn, I mean, this is insane what our nephew is doing. And I know Heather and I would pray protection over him and things of that nature. But tell us about that. I mean, how did you process all of and maybe I don't know what he showed you or not, because he probably didn't want you to worry, but how did you process all that as a mom, just being a mom?
I tell you, the first deployment, I was a nervous wreck every day. I prayed hard every day, several times a day. It really became real to me first at his first deployment when I was on the first deployment was crazy. I didn't get to talk to him, but maybe once every 3 weeks.
Wow.
Because there was no cell phones. Yeah. And when there was, but not that they all had.
Right.
And there was no service over there for a cell phone if they had them.
Goodness.
But he would call it. They would take turns on a satellite phone. Well, it was his turn. He would usually call me. It was in the middle of the night. Yeah. It was morning over there, but middle of the night here, or afternoon there. And I was talking to him, asking him how he's doing. He was a baby then.
Right, right.
20 years old baby.
Goodness.
And we were talking, and I heard this huge explosion. And I'm like, Taylor. And it went silent for a minute because there was a delay. That delay was so hard always on that phone. And he's like, Mom, I am fine, but I have to call you back.
No way.
There was just an explosion. Everybody, I'm fine, but I have to call you back. And click. And I didn't hear from him for like another 2 weeks. Gosh. But apparently there was an explosion outside the wire, which is the gate, the fence, and to the base, and not. Fortunately, it was someone putting an IED that had blown themselves up, trying to put it there for our men, but he had blown himself up. But I mean, processing things like that, I didn't get sleep for the next 2 weeks. It was insane. Yeah. That first deployment was so hard. The second deployment was a little bit less because he was up on a mountaintop. Yeah. Looking down at a valley. He was. They didn't get much action. They didn't go many places off of that base. But that first deployment, they were always out. Were always out, and he was the lead on point, looking for IEDs. God. Looking for IEDs. That was his job.
Doesn't get any more dangerous than that. I mean,
when he would tell me that, I can't, and I got a lot of pictures from one of the war horses that trained him. Mm-hmm. That first deployment made Taylor the Marine he was. Wow. He was. And his sergeant, whom I love. I've been to visit him, Velasquez.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of the best men you'll ever meet in your life.
Wow.
But he was always with Taylor. He was a sergeant. He was always with Taylor, and he gave me these pictures. Jeremy, I'm not lying. There are probably 100 pictures of him and Taylor out front. There's a point. People are taking pictures of them, and they're searching for IEDs to make sure that their men behind them didn't step on one, that he cleared the path. That, if they found one, they had to dig it out, dig around it, point it out, and make sure everybody knew what it was, not to step on it, go around it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was... looking back on that, I don't know if I processed. I mean, you learn more and more as you go.
Exactly.
As a parent in the military, what everything means and how,
Right.
and they get more and more where they'll tell you more. When they get home, they'll tell you more.
Exactly.
But I don't know how I process it now. That like, oh my gosh, what was that kid doing?
I know.
But yeah, he had a crazy job that first deployment.
I'm just sitting here processing everything you're saying, and I'm like, God, like, who signs up? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Taylor always had that. I don't even think bravery is the word. It's something extra. I don't know. He was always willing to do, and that's when I think of my nephew. That's what I think of, and even before he passed, that's the image I had of him.
Yeah.
The freaking hero. Like, dude is on the front lines. He's going to do what nobody else is willing to do, and he's going to do it for his men. He's going to be there, and he's going to lead his men. Like, that's and I figured that out, as he got older and he was progressing in his military career, and he would come down and tell us a little bit about what he was doing. And he was always so humble with it, though. Like, he never wanted to, like, just... He will tell you what he's doing, but he's not just going to give you all the... Exactly.
Yeah, he wouldn't. He wouldn't.
Because he's not going to say, dude, what we have to do
Guess
is...
what I do.
Yeah, exactly.
He never.
Like,
I wish he would have sometimes, but...
I know.
Because I find out more and more from the men... Because he was in 4 different groups.
Mm-hmm.
His career started with 3-7. And then he went to MCRD, which is where he went to boot camp, but he was like a training specialist for a short time. Then he went to 3-5 because he couldn't do without the infantry. He wanted back in. So he went to 3-5, and then he went to 2-1.
2-1.
And all of them tell me all these stories. I'm like, my kid.
He didn't tell me nothing.
He was doing this?
Exactly. Like, he never told me nothing, man. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe it was just a way for him to cope, or maybe he was just able to shut it off. Maybe when...
I think he did.
I
think he did. When he was with family, he wanted that.
Well,
he wanted to be with family and chill and be like it was when it was just, us.
Absolutely.
So.
And that's one thing about this family, from a larger... There's something very special about our family.
Yeah.
And I credit that, Billy Ray and Janie, my mother and father-in-law. Janie has gone on to be with the Lord, but they really instilled very, very deep family values. And Taylor had that, and we all kind of have that. That's something we still strive to keep going. But, that when I think about Taylor, that's part of his legacy too. Being so deeply rooted in family and nieces and nephews. And, of course, let's talk a little bit about this because, man, his sisters,
that's his world.
That is so hard. How have they dealt with all of this?
To be honest, it's been tough, Jeremy. Tori's got, when we talk about it, at the beginning... It was a little easier because we were so focused on, hearing people tell us, where do you think he is? What do you think he's doing? I can feel him.
Mm-hmm.
And now a lot of it has turned to anger.
Absolutely.
We're trying to work through it. Allie's gotten really quiet. Tori's gone the opposite and gotten really, if in a way it's good because, our family is deep rooted. Christian faith, but we always have a good time. But it's the Christian faith comes first,
Yeah.
and what we do and what we say, what we feel. And it's kind of, she's gotten a little a little angry, and we're working on that. I mean, I'm sure that's a natural thing. I'm sure it's normal. And as for me, I can feel both. I've gotten a little bit quiet at times. I've gotten angry at times. But I've kind of come to the realization that I know where he is. I know that he's happy and safe, and that he loves us. What happened is crappy. What happened was wrong. How it was done was wrong. But right now, Taylor left a letter. I know I'm all over the place, but it's coming to the one thing.
Yeah.
Taylor left a letter for us. They do that when they go on deployments. They write a letter to whomever they want in case something happens. He wrote one to us that stated, how much he loved us, a lot of other things, but he said, I want you to live for me. Do not live without me.
Wow.
Live for me. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I've decided I want to go on some adventures with Taylor. That's what I did this last weekend.
Exactly.
With the skydiving. That was me and Taylor, because we were supposed to do that when I turned 50
Wow.
a few years ago. But we did it. He was there with me, and I plan on living for Taylor, for him to see things through what I'm doing and for him to be there. And that's what's going to keep me going and keep me grounded.
Yeah.
I think, but that's what I've decided to do.
Yeah.
So.
And I think, you hit the nail on the head as far as emotions. I think a lot of that is normal, but there's so much that, it's one thing to grieve a loss, but I want people to understand that this is not normal. Like what we are experiencing as a family is something very few people experience. I mean, people die in war. That's one thing. But, when you hear about things, and then when you get into the political side of it, and you share what you feel comfortable with. But, man, there's this part of you that, like you said, it is so freaking crappy. And you think about that. Yeah. And I remember we had just gone to bed.
Yeah.
And it was Thomas, and
he called y'all.
Yeah, he called. Heather answered the phone. Gosh, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. And I knew, and man, you prepare yourself, or you think, because they tell you, well, Taylor is on the front line, something could, but you never really process that it could actually happen. Yeah. You know that it's a possibility because of the dangers, but as civilians, we can't really wrap our minds around what's really going on. But I remember the call, and then of course Heather's reaction told me everything I needed to know, which was, it's not something you ever really get over. I don't think we'll ever be over it. I think we just learned to live life in the new normal, whatever that is, but you never really get over it. Sure. So talk to me about that if you want to, tell me about that.
That's one thing. I'll get into that, but I wish people would ask me more questions about Taylor. I know people don't know sometimes that when they approach me, they don't know what to say.
Right.
What to say. Ask me about Taylor. Ask me anything. That's what I live for now, is to be able to talk about him.
Wow.
Sorry, just put that in there.
Yeah.
Let me talk about that whole situation. They were there. I think he was there a total of 7 days before it happened.
This was in Kabul?
Yeah, Kabul, okay. Afghanistan. I think 7 days before August 26th happened. What they would do, they were in, like I said, 2-1, Golf Company and Echo Company. Taylor was in Echo. They would take turns at Abbey Gate. And the thing that makes me so angry about it is that they had these Marines basically acting as judge, jury, and executioner. And when I say executioner, I don't mean they were hurting people.
Right.
They had to decide who got through and who did not get through. These were Marines. They were not trained to, okay, let me see your paperwork. I got to examine your paperwork. While these people are handing their babies to them, they had to stay in the ditch, basically, is what I'm going to call it. It was a canal, a ditch, while they handed their babies over.
Yeah.
And these Marines, these beautiful Marines, there were some Army and Navy and that there too, so I can't not speak of them. They would hand their children to them because they wanted them out of there so bad. These kids were not trained to do this. These were doing the job of the government employees would do.
Yeah.
I mean, they
They
had to defend themselves. I mean, Jeremy, they were as close as me and you to these people that they didn't know if they wanted to kill them or not, or if they really wanted help.
Yeah.
They had to judge this in 2 seconds. These 19, 20-year-olds had to judge this.
Yes.
But they had to protect themselves at the same time. And they had a football field away, not even a football field, probably half a football field away. If you look at the schematics of all the paperwork that we got and the maps that we got.
Right.
They had set up a chevron, if you will, a chevron shape of kind of like storage containers that you would see on the back of a train. And that was like this.
Right.
Okay? On the other side of that was the Taliban.
Wow.
That was a Taliban checkpoint in this canal. Okay. Marines just on the other side of that. On the other side of that is where we could defend ourselves and where we could do something. On the
but
other
you
side
couldn't
of that,
cross that line.
The Taliban were over there. They could kill people. They could beat them.
Right in front of.
Right in front. They
and
couldn't do
nothing.
Thing. They could not do a thing.
Wow.
And, so
was that going on?
Yes.
Where they
Yes. Taylor said.
Sheesh.
To Nicole, he said, I cannot wait to get home so I can feel human again. He said, the things that I've seen happen, I never want to see again in my life. I cannot wait to get home.
Wow.
And so these Marines they had to protect themselves, protect the people that they pulled in. They had to check credentials. They had to, if they checked their credentials and they passed their checkpoint and they went down the road to the next checkpoint, which was the State Department that should have been doing all this in the first place.
Right.
If the State Department turned them away, guess what the Marines had to do?
Wow.
They had to walk them back out. These families, they had to walk them back out and say, I'm sorry, you have to go back out through the Taliban. You can't come, you're not. Anyway, the whole thing was completely ridiculously done.
It is ridiculous.
And, he knew it. They all knew it, but they had to protect themselves, and they had to get as many people out of there as they possibly could. Now, from Taylor's first 2 deployments, he did have the things that he saw, the things that these people did to each other. I'm talking about the Afghan people. He did have a strong dislike for their way of life.
Right.
I'm trying to put it as
as nice as possible. Yeah.
But this changed him as far as these people need my help.
Wow.
I got to get them out of here. And his men would tell me that he barely slept. When he was out there that day on August 26th, he was not off duty, but he was supposed to be napping. He was supposed to be getting rest because it was not their turn to be at the gate.
Yeah.
It was golf company. Echo was not at the gate. But he was out there because there was, an interpreter that he had known from one of his first 2 deployments.
Right.
That he was getting, information from the States.
Yeah.
And, on his cell phone, because he had service on his phone. And he was doing this on his own time, trying to get this interpreter out of there because he knew he was going to be in trouble if he didn't get him out. That's why he was out there.
Goodness gracious.
So I could wring his neck, and I'm probably going to, and I can see his face when I get there. He's like, Mom, hey, Mom. But he was out there on his own time all the time, according to his men and according to his lieutenant, because he said that he saw his mom, his sisters, his nieces in that crowd, and they deserve to have a life. They deserve to live and to be able to have a good life. And he would always tell his men, come on, let's do 30 more minutes. Let's do an hour.
Yeah.
Let's get out there and just get some more in. And,
right.
They said that he was doing that the whole week that they were there.
Talk about a hero. Like, that's a whole nother level,
Yeah.
Man, I can just, the compassion that he had, God, he exemplifies in every way what a true hero is. You know, we watched that. Was it the Pentagon that, or the briefing that was done? I think you sent a link, so we watched that. We saw, because they showed some of the pictures of what you're describing there, and I remember thinking, like, are you kidding me? Like, there's no separation from.
It wasn't. It was me at that door from where the guy stepped up.
And it's just unreal. And
there's no way for them to have protected themselves.
I think that's the hardest part for me, is just knowing how sloppily,
Yeah, I mean, that's a good word.
It's
like, okay, let's just do this. I mean, it was just like, and they knew. I mean, Taylor, I'm gonna give him some praise again. How frustrating it must have been for him, because he knew that this was trouble. This was not right. This is not how you run this operation. And I've had so many people, lieutenants, captains, because he was a war horse. That's what I call him, because basically the old ways of the Marine Corps, he was one of the last, and they knew it.
Wow.
And he had been on the ground. There's not very many left, Jeremy, that have
believe
been on
it.
the ground. They would come to him, ask his opinion on operations, on training, on what do the boys need? How does this this training look? And if there was something that he knew was not right, they would take his word for it, and they would change their training. They would go off of what he said. And these are captains, these are lieutenants, these are gunnies, these are people way above him.
Yeah.
But he wasn't like, he never talked about that. Sometimes he would tell me his frustration at a certain captain, a certain lieutenant, whatever, that they had never been in combat before, and he was just frustrated because but he said that they would listen to him and at least take his advice on most things. But I mean, just his frustration, and I think that's another reason he was out there. He wanted to watch his men. He never would give an order that he wasn't willing to do himself.
Exactly.
That he hadn't done before. That if he hadn't done it, he wasn't going to tell somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
And he would never give somebody an order. If he was scared to do it himself, he would never make somebody else do it. He was with them.
It's crazy.
So.
Such a crazy ordeal. It seems so surreal. 13, like that's just what we kept saying. Like, what are the freaking odds?
Tell me about it, Jeremy.
13
Out of
people, and he's one of 13.
Yeah.
I still don't know. I still don't know that I can process it.
I still think, I'm like, what? But I know it happens. Everything's happens for a reason. There was that was his time. There was a reason. I know it is, but it is hard to process.
Yeah, it's extremely hard to process, and I don't know how you're doing it as a mom, but
I don't either. To be honest, I think, Jeremy, I sit there and in my mind I'm like, this cannot be real, and then I'll see like something that somebody has sent me. The great people of this country have sent me so many things. I'll see, a wood carving that they've sent me. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I get that feeling again, that sinking feeling. This is real.
Yeah.
This is my life now. This is real. This happened to my child. And I mean, I do that every day. It happens to me every day, over and over. Probably about 3 times a day. Reality will hit me again. But
man, it's just insane. And we can drive ourselves crazy thinking about that. But it's just crazy to think. But you're right. We have to believe that everything happens for a reason. And I know that there are so many people, obviously our family included, that we're not going to let his story
nope.
go. It has to live on. His memory, what he did, the selfless acts, the way he cared for his men. You had the opportunity to take us all out to California last year. We went to Pendleton and all that, and man, what they had to say, you get goosebumps. I'll be honest, I I don't think I've ever seen or felt a brotherhood
Yeah.
like that I felt when I was around Taylor's guys, and then to hear the stories and the respect that they had for him, and it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wanted to share about anything they told you, or just being around his men? I mean, because I know you felt some comfort too, just being around his guys.
When I'm in their presence, I always there's such a. I mean, it feels like somebody's just hugging me. Such great. I mean, there's these crazy Marines that will go through a wall if they have to.
Yes.
But then they're so sweet, and they're somebody's baby. You're like this. I mean, they go out. They do have crazy weekends, but
Yes.
but they're going to be right there for
Yeah.
any. But yes, I feel the most comfort. But yeah, they tell me some great stories about him and how much they knew how much he cared about them, and that's all he wanted is for what he taught them to make them better.
Yeah.
He celebrated in their success.
Wow.
He didn't care about rank.
Yeah.
He didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a private to a lieutenant, a captain, he's going to treat you the same. He's going to give you the same respect until you do something that makes him like slap you a little bit.
Exactly.
Anyway, but he cared for them so much. I am still so astonished that he cared for his men so much that they really felt it. They knew it.
They really did.
They knew it 100%.
Like they got tattoos. Like they all got matching
they
tattoos,
did.
and it was like
Yep.
the cards.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember that, and just the stories. And he had an impact.
Yeah.
And I think he's still having an impact on their lives. I mean,
Yeah.
once you're in the presence of somebody like that, and then you see the selflessness, and then that never goes away.
No.
That's going to be something that was part of their lives forever. And I'm thinking about too the honor that was bestowed upon him at Arlington. You never want to for a loved one, but man, to think that, wow, my nephew is right there amongst
the greats.
The greats. And he is a great,
And this, how many people came, Jeremy? I was in shock. I couldn't process it. I still don't process
people
it.
kept coming in the door. I'm like, whoa!
So
I was blown away.
And you know how I mentioned he was in the 4 different battalions, and
Mm-hmm.
they were there. People from groups from every battalion.
Yeah.
And they all had
Wow.
the same story.
Yeah.
How much he loved his men and how good of a person he was, and that he just was a true leader.
Exactly.
True leader. I mean, a leader. Even before he got rank, he was still a leader among his peers because he did it the Taylor way. Do
exactly.
it the Taylor way. That's my thing. That's what I tell
Come
myself
on,
all the
man.
time. Do it the Taylor way. Do it right. Do it the Taylor way.
Yeah, I see him giving you strength. When you
100%.
did your skydiving, so I was like, man,
I couldn't have done it without.
it's like
No.
unreal. What advice, Kelly, would you give somebody? Maybe it's not a loss through means of military, but a parent that has lost a child. What advice or word of encouragement would you give them if for somebody who might be walking through a loss?
I'm going to say a lot of prayer. Pray a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to give advice because it's the same losing someone. There's that loss, but it's just so hard to pinpoint one thing I want to say.
Right.
All I can say, and it goes back to this, just your faith, believe.
Yes.
I could not make it without my faith, knowing that Jesus lives, knowing that he is there, that Taylor is with him.
Wow.
That Taylor is okay. Jeremy, that's the only advice I can give is to pray. You got to reach it. You got to reach it. Otherwise, I
can't imagine.
I feel so bad for people. And no, I don't judge them. I don't look down on them. I feel so bad for them that don't believe what we believe, that we will be together again, because I don't know how I would do it.
Wow.
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to get out of bed every morning.
Goodness.
If I didn't have that belief system.
Yeah.
But again, because I know Taylor, the way Taylor lived, the way he loved, the way he protected me and the girls, I know there's something else. There's something else coming.
Absolutely.
I know he's there, and that's how I make it through my day.
Exactly. And
So.
you have been nonstop. I mean, there has been so much honor bestowed upon his name. I mean, you're literally, it seems like you're at one event after another.
Yeah.
And I hope it keeps going.
It does help.
Absolutely.
It does help.
But the people are still doing that. I want to talk about the scholarship too,
Okay.
because what is the name of the scholarship? I'll probably say it wrong if I.
The Staff Sergeant Taylor Hoover Memorial Scholarship.
Perfect.
Isn't that what we need?
Yeah, I know, right? Look, and I say that too because for the local people, we're going to be putting on the 5K. If you haven't already heard, that's going to be September 3rd this year. And the proceeds to that are going to go to the scholarship. So the website is...
Yeah.
You can say it. Just say it. Yeah, just say it. What?
Taylor Hoover Memorial. Yeah, and
Taylor, yeah.
and every bit's going to that. So hopefully we can get more than one, give out more than one. Hopefully we can give out a few. I mean, that would be great to help. And it's not going to be based on grades. It's not going to be based on, what the schools require. It's going to be, I want people based on their character.
Yes.
Based on their service, based on honor, courage, commitment.
Wow.
That's what we're going to base it on.
Awesome.
So, I hope that brings more people, wanting to apply for it. But yeah, I hope we're able to give away a few.
Absolutely. Keep that in mind. TaylorHooverMemorial.org. The 5K is going to be September the 3rd. That is going to be at West Memphis at Worthington Park. It's going to be food trucks and merch and all of that. And speaking of merch, you can get, I'll put the link to this. This is the US 13. This is a special made hat for Taylor. This is his hat. So I rep this every time. But I'll put the link to where you can find this hat. And we want to encourage you to order one. It's not about the merch. It's not about any of that stuff, but it is about honoring a true hero. And I when I say that I know he's a hero, it's not just because he was. I know, I know who he was, and I know what he was about. And all of my earliest memories, Taylor was enlisted, serving his country, and he paid and gave the most, the ultimate. For our freedoms, and I pray that I pray it changes somebody's heart and somebody's mind. We need to really think about our servicemen and women. We need to include them in our prayers, and not only that, but the families who have to suffer when their child is deployed, and then maybe a family that gets a call like what we had to go through. It's life changing. So please keep them. Please keep them in your prayers. Kelly, tell us one last thing or any final thing that you want people to know. If you want them to talk about Taylor, what is that one thing or any final parting words that you want to say about Taylor?
It's funny that you say that. I was going to tell a story.
Please do. I want you, because you told me when you came in here you had one.
Well, when they were ramping up, their training, getting ready for the deployment, because they do have a ramp up. They go through certain trainings before to get them ready. I mean, he was going through a lot of. He loved his guys, and he loved all of 2-1. His platoon was special to him, but he loved all of 2-1. But there was a few months there where every weekend he was called back to the base because somebody was doing something.
Something they weren't supposed to be doing.
Now, I don't know how they did this. It's hilarious. And he was so mad at me because I was laughing and telling him how funny it was and how, hey, okay. So he got a call.
Yeah.
And his fiance Nicole said that his face just turned white, and she said, "What happened? What is wrong?" And he said, "Slip and slides and strippers."
Oh,
and she's like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "They have snuck slip and slides and Snickers strippers on the base, and they are slip and sliding by the barracks." And he said, "I gotta go get them off base." And
my gosh.
so he had to go get the strippers off base, get rid of the slip and slide.
That is hilarious.
That's just one. There were so many other things.
That is hilarious.
Yes,
So he had to go
yes.
play dad and
He
get
did.
them off.
For those 2 months, 8 weekends, he had to play dad. I mean, he had to play it
Wow.
all the time.
Yeah.
But he had to play dad. And there's another story for
Yes,
that, too.
tell it.
Yeah, so he got mad at me because I was telling him how funny that was, and I'm like, that's something I would want to see that. I would want to pay to see Marine strippers and slip and slide.
That's
see what they were doing
hilarious.
and how they got that past the guard.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Anyway, but his frustrations, he's just like, I can't. He said, if I have to go back again, I'm.
Dude, that is
There
so
were some other
funny.
things that happened, some accidental discharges with some weapons, and
No.
I mean he was at his wit's end.
Yes.
At his wit's end. So they told a story. His lieutenant told us this story. How Taylor got so frustrated, but he loved these guys, but he was so frustrated with them that he created. He had a few mantras. Movement is life was his big mantra.
Right.
And
Yes.
we can talk about that. I want to talk about that.
Yes,
at the end.
please.
But this mantra was something different. So they were in formation one time, and Taylor. This is why I want to talk about him being the dad. His lieutenant, Lieutenant Byrd, loved him to death. Him and Taylor were very close. He said it was like a mom and dad situation. Taylor was the daddy, but he was the staff
Wow.
sergeant. The lieutenant was the mom, but they had to work together. And this is coming from his
No
lieutenant
way.
that told me this.
Yes,
Taylor was
yes.
the daddy of that platoon.
I believe it.
And so they were in formation, and they had some newbies that come on, and he, Taylor was talking to him, going about his daily spiel or whatever, talking to him, and he said, called a newbie forward. He's like, "What's my one rule?" I think they were going on Liberty. He called it Lebo,
Okay.
but it was Liberty. Meaning they had the weekend off.
Right, right.
And so he was giving them the daddy talk, and he,
What's my one
yeah.
rule?
and he said, "What's my one rule?" Have you heard this?
No,
story
I
before?
haven't.
And the little newbie, the little I think it was a private first class, said, "Staff Sergeant, I don't know." He's like, "I'm going to ask you again." And he's like, "Sir, I don't know."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he's like, "I'm going to give you a pass." He called one of the corporals up. And
Yeah.
he's like, "What's my one rule?" He's like, "Staff Sergeant, your one rule is to be a grown ass man."
I love it.
And Taylor's
That's
like,
hilarious.
"You know what that means? That means don't do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And take care of your business."
Take care of your business. That's exactly
Yes.
what I was going to say.
But anyway, that's hilarious, and they
love it.
always said that Taylor said be a grown
Yeah,
man.
come on. Handle your stuff.
Yes.
That's funny. Seeing dad or picturing Taylor in
Yeah.
that dad role and just, it's hilarious
It
to
is
me.
hilarious
It
because
is-
he's such a goofball to us.
That's what I'm
it's
saying.
hard to see that people were actually kind of frightened of him. I'm like,
That's
but-
funny,
but,
dude. And they
yeah.
all were. Like when we went
they were.
at 2-1 and we met all his guys, they were all like, you could tell there was mad respect for him.
Oh yeah, they were
just
scared to mess up. I don't think they were
yeah.
scared of him, but they were scared to mess up.
to let him down,
To let
like
him,
to
his
disappoint him.
That's what they said, that his look of disappointment was worst thing that could happen.
Yeah, yeah.
From him was his being
Not worried about
disappointed.
him being mad, but just
Yeah.
feeling like you let
Yeah.
him down.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I love those stories. It just gives us a different view of Taylor and how he was around his men.
Yeah.
But that's cool, though. I mean, I think that's cool to be the responsible one, and it's no surprise.
Yeah.
That I don't know that he just ranked up the way he did, I guess, and that
Yeah.
he just moved on.
Yeah.
Had a really good, compassionate care for his dudes.
Oh, yeah.
Because you don't just play the dad role if you don't care about
You don't
your
care.
men. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
You're gonna just discipline without care.
Exactly.
That's leading with authority, not with heart. not with-
Exactly.
yeah.
So, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell us about this movement is life, too.
Yeah, movement is life. I'm glad we're going to end on that because that's very important. Now, movement is life. He talked about it all the time. Now, in battle, that did mean you got to keep moving, keep
Yeah,
your feet
yeah.
moving. In football, keep your feet moving.
Right.
But what it means as well, Taylor went through some hard times. With his
Gotcha.
divorce and
Yeah.
everything. He came through that like nobody I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
I mean, because it almost destroyed him, almost destroyed his
believe it.
career, almost destroyed him as a human being, almost destroyed his faith, everything.
Wow.
He set his mind to, this is what I believe, this is what I know, this is not going to get me down. He kept moving. He didn't
Gosh.
stop. When things would knock him down, he kept moving.
Man.
He kept on going, and he pulled himself out of it.
Yeah.
And that's what it really meant to him, is that you got to keep moving.
Yeah.
If you have a dream, if you have something that you know is right,
Yes.
if you want something out of life, you got to keep moving. You cannot stay still. And that's something that I'm afraid I've let happen to me a few times in my life. Another mantra that Taylor and I, that we talked about all the time, was fear causes hesitation, and hesitation can cause your worst fears to come true.
Wow.
And to me, that one and movement is life go hand in hand.
Man.
You got to keep moving. You got to take your opportunities. When you feel something is right, you got to do it. When you feel something is wrong, you got to go the other way.
That's awesome.
Yep.
And it's so stinking true. How many times have we not pursued a dream or a relationship or a business or whatever it is because of the fear?
Yep.
You know, and or maybe, you know, I can see that movement is life. That's probably going to be my next tattoo, by the way.
It's awesome.
Movement is life.
It means so much.
It does. and it not only does it mean so much, but it makes so much stinking sense.
Yeah.
You know, because if you allow yourself to stay in a place of, call it darkness or call it, you know, exactly.
Yeah,
it's going to swallow you up. It's going to
will.
eat you.
It
And
will.
movement is life. I heard that, and I knew that what was his motto or mantra, but I don't think it was explained to me like that, and that is powerful.
It's huge for him.
Movement is life. Yeah, that's going to be my next tattoo. So, unreal. Well, you know, there's a 45-minute podcast isn't going to even scratch the surface on Taylor's life and
but it's great.
What he meant to us, what he means to us. What he'll always mean to us, the memories and just his sacrifice. I hope for anybody listening or watching this that you just really have an understanding of what our young men and women are going through, and just keep them in your prayers and support them emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever. And I'm just honored. You know, losing Taylor obviously wouldn't be our first option, but to know that, man, he is a true American hero, and that is never, ever, ever going to be taken away. That's you know, that's awesome in that regard. So, absolutely,
Thank
goodness. All right, Kel. Well, unless you got anything else, we can end it right there, I guess.
I just appreciate you keeping his name out there. That's all I want out of my life. That's it.
That's it. That's what we're going to do. And September 3rd, if you're a runner or if you're not a runner,
come hang with us.
Come hang, man. We're going to be jamming loud music, live music, be DJing. There will be some food trucks.
Lots of food trucks.
Come be part of the atmosphere. We want to honor Taylor, and it's going to be a great time. So please keep that in mind. And we thank you guys for tuning in and listening or watching, whatever you're doing. So thank you much.